So I just watched the season finale of Fallout, and wow, what a stunning, amazing episode. One of the best TV show finales I've maybe ever seen. This is earth-shattering to the universe of Fallout. This changes everything. We learn about the origin of the apocalypse. We learn about the true agenda of Vault-Tec. The only response to this episode is woo-wee! So just 2 episodes left of the Fallout series. I'm going to be sad to be done with it because it's been awesome. And they set up a big finale, so I'm hoping that there's a huge reveal and it's as satisfying as it should be based on all the clues they've had leading up to this point. And I gotta say, this episode was the funniest episode so far. A lot of great comedic moments in this episode. I was laughing most of the time. So it is memorable and a standout for that reason alone, but lots of great Easter eggs in this episode as well. And we start off with one of them, which is playing the Fallout 4 theme song, which they also played last week. Love to see that. And we're starting with people who are lead farmers. The Ghoul killed this guy's brother Rufius in the last episode, and he is on the move searching for the woman named Lee, who leads the group of raiders who infiltrated the vault in episode 1. So she is a big figure in this episode. We get more flashbacks with Cooper, and we learn a little bit more about her. So we get some backstory. I'm really curious to see how that all shakes out in the end. This first scene is like a classic Western scene here. We have the gunslinger on the move, a bounty hunter. It is a bit strange. I think that he's completely given up on the head at this point, but maybe this thing is way more interesting to him based on his past with this woman. We don't know how that ends up. I'm sure we'll get more flashbacks in the next episode to find out. But I love the tension in this scene, and I think it's just a classic Western type of scene here. And then he kills the little brother because he knows the brother will eventually come back to get revenge. And then we smash cut to the old days with this woman Lee, and she is leading this meeting, this radical meeting, and talking about how the future doesn't look bright and all this stuff. And it definitely sounds just kind of generic, you know, not based on any facts and stuff. So our main character Cooper in this scene is just like, I've had enough, I'm leaving. And you know, he makes some good points too. His perspective makes sense. You know, that she seems to be advocating for communism, which leads to breadlines, which is just, if you're a student of history, you know that it has a lot of blood on its hands, that ideology. So he's against that. And he's also saying, I just work, I make a paycheck for this company. He's not seeing the facts. You know, she didn't bring the facts and evidence about the company that he was hoping to see, so he is out of here. So I think that this scene is pretty good. It makes sense. And Lee was also kind of outwardly stating the themes of the show, which in general I'm kind of against a little bit, being too on the nose there, but I think it's fine. I mean, it's stuff I was talking about in the last episode, how the vaults kind of represent the American dream being a lie, essentially, and that's always been in Fallout. You know, I think it's more under the surface. Now they just, you know, come out and say it, and that's fine. You know, it's definitely lacking subtlety, but I'll give them this one. You know, in this context, it makes perfect sense to have that be a talking point here. And here, the woman Lee is talking about how she was developing cold fusion, which would essentially be free power for the rest of time. She says it's hard to monetize because it's not a single-use product that you need to buy over and over again. But you would have to maintain it. I mean, you know, I guess there's arguments that you could monetize it, I suppose. But, you know, she's saying that that is incompatible, and that Vault-Tec bought the companies that she worked for to own this technology and, I guess, sit on it or use it in some way. And she wants to find out what for. So she wants Cooper to spy on his wife, who works for the company. And it's kind of a bold move, to say the least, asking him to do that to his wife. But he's already had the seed of doubt planted within him. So he is willing to go that way, not because of what she said, more because of what his friends said about the company being financially responsible for nuclear warfare, essentially. So she also says that she's not a communist, that they just label her that to squash dissent. I don't know. Sounds like something a communist would say, but who knows? We shall see. We don't know a lot about this lady at this point. And then we get back with Lucy, and she is learning the truth of the vault that she was at. And I was wrong about the last episode. I assumed that Lucy was the one being experimented on in the scene, that she was supposed to come down here, all of that, and she was supposed to have this show put on for her just to see how she would react. It's some kind of experiment. I was completely wrong. It seems like the people are just incompetent and they just let people in and they just kind of give them freedom and then they just magically expect them not to come down here. It's a little silly, and it's the fact that you would assume that somebody coming into their trap would not be as benevolent as Lucy is, even though she does commit violence in the previous episode, but seemingly in self-defense because she thinks that they're going to turn her into one of those. But it turns out they're just incompetent. It's a little convenient, I guess, for the writing, that you would think that if they had this pattern of behavior, it would have resulted in the vault getting taken over by outsiders at some point. But that doesn't seem to be the case for some reason, and I'm definitely curious about that. But, you know, it's fine. It's a comedy as well. You know, Fallout has a comedic element as well, so you can go that way if it's funny to a certain extent. So I think it works. And here we got a video of the guy we saw in the flashback with Cooper recording that commercial. We actually see the commercial later in the episode as well, just to remind you, I think. But he was leading this Vault 4, and it was supposed to be all scientists, and they had the idea, let's fuse human DNA with radiation-resistant monsters. So they were creating the monster we saw in the irradiated water in episode 3 or whichever one that was. Turns out that they created that creature to begin with, and we saw it in last week's episode as well. So they did actually create this creature, but he was pleading, hey, don't take this as evidence that the scientists can't lead a community and this idea has potential. He knew full well that that's exactly what Vault-Tec would do. So he knows that it was an experiment and he pretty much failed. So I think that that's interesting footage. It turns out that the person who was the monster is the overseer's uncle, I think he said. So that's fun. And then we got this scene where she's getting dragged out and Maximus has to rise to the occasion to save her. And now we go to Thaddeus going to Red Rocket, and I was like, woo, we got Red Rocket. It was cool, you know, it's from the video games. And he actually leaves the dog in the Nuka-Cola machine here. And if you'd ever played Fallout 4, you don't know, but in Fallout 4, Red Rocket is one of the first locations you get to. And it's not this Red Rocket, I'm assuming it's a chain, but Red Rocket, you find dog meat there in Fallout 4. So it's a nice little Easter egg that he leaves the dog here to be found by Cooper. So that's fun. You know, a nice little shout out to Fallout 4. Love to see that. And Thaddeus, he got his foot stepped on by Maximus. So he's a bit messed up, you know. So he needs help, and that's really what his next part of the episode is. He continues on. And this scene's really funny. You know, you think they're going to chop off her head, and then they reveal that they're just going to let her go. We're going to kill you by letting you go, which is really funny, and they give her free stuff, and I love it, but Maximus is like, I gotta save her. He gets the suit, even though it really looked like they were going to kill her and stuff, and then, you know, he's throwing people across the room, destroying stuff, and wrong timing. It was really funny, well done, well executed, great comedic timing from our lead talent here, and I love it. And then outside the vault, they're like, hey, you gotta give the battery back. And I like this because Lucy's the character who's always appealing to ethics and morality. And then Maximus eventually goes along with it. They return the battery. And I really like this scene here. It didn't quite go as I was expecting it would. I expected that Maximus's lie to Lucy would result in them parting ways. And I thought that this scene, when it first started, was going to exist to give him an opportunity to confess the truth, but then he would actually just continue the lie and then the result will get worse. That's not what happened. What happened is the opposite. He decides to reveal the truth, and then, you know, Lucy's like, hey, I'm not perfect either. I just did a bad thing. I hurt some people that turned out to be innocent. And, you know, she understands the wasteland requires that occasionally you lie to people. She's starting to understand how this goes. And she kind of proposes marriage to him, basically. Like, hey, come back to Vault and live with me. It was a really sweet scene, and I liked it. It was pretty cool. And then now we're with Thaddeus, and he happens to pass by. This is the guy who was messing with the chicken in episode 2, 1 or 2? I think 2. And we're in this house that Lucy walked through, and I know why they're doing it. I know why they're doing it, because they just want to, save us some budget. This stuff is expensive, and this show looks so dang good. If they want to reuse a set, I understand. But just them walking past the exact same place, the coincidence of everything, it just doesn't feel like this world is as big as it should be. We're going back and forth between a lot of different things. The coincidence, I mean, Cooper just so happens to walk by the Red Rocket where he needs to go. It's all these coincidences. It is starting to get extra annoying. It started out in episode 2, and it's just been happening like every episode since. It's like, come on, bro. And then he gets the dog, and I'm like, okay, now we have an excuse for him to actually find the head because the dog can track the scent. That actually makes sense, but I don't even think they're going to go that route anyway. So, I don't know. But that's beside the point. I just have to live with that because that's like the one thing that really bugs me about this show. Everything else is pretty good. The pacing of the pilot, I definitely stand by those criticisms. But other than that, I'm loving it. So, we got his foot messed up here. He gets it cured by this guy in exchange for the fusion core. And it turns out that later in the episode, he got something that turned him into a ghoul, because ghouls have extra healing powers. So he is now a ghoul, which is not great. And I love this shot of the hands coming out of the slot. This is very inspired cinematography, and I enjoyed that. And then here, another twist I wasn't expecting. I predicted that Norm here would be the one who would poison the prisoners because he was saying we should execute them. But it turned out it was Betty. I'm assuming Betty is pretending that, we're going to find out who did it, but I'm pretty sure that she killed the prisoners or had them killed because she knows that the vault is going to have some hard times ahead with the water chip issue and a bunch of other things. So she knows we got to get rid of these prisoners, and we're just going to, find somebody to blame it on. So maybe that's why she put Norm in that place, so she could eventually use him as the patsy or something. But they arrest the person outside the door, so I'm a little bit confused about that, but, I'm curious to understand what her angle is here. But right as they're dealing with that situation, she assigns a bunch of people to go to Vault 32. They're going to repopulate the vault, and Norm's brother Chet is going over there, and I'm assuming that Betty's separating them on purpose. And Norm here is like, you're being a coward because I don't really understand what he's being a coward about. He's just not doing anything about the fact that they have this knowledge that something's wrong. Norm feels like he has to do something about it. And I just wanted Chet to be like, what are you doing about it? Like, you're not doing anything, But I get the conflict, and you want to have them have a separation that is uneasy, and there's a tragedy to it, right? Like, you don't want the last thing you say to your cousin to be like, you're a coward, bye. That's not cool. And then Cooper finds the dog. I like this scene. And then we flash back to the old Cooper with his dog Roosevelt. I like the dog back and forth, and he even says later, you're not him. He doesn't have that same attachment that he does to Roosevelt here. He's thinking about putting the bug on his wife's Pip-Boy, and then he throws it away, and then he second guesses himself again. Roosevelt even knows, like, hey, this is wrong. The dog detects something's wrong. But he watches the commercial again, and then just those questions in his mind, he can't get over it. He ends up getting it out of the trash. So I'm really curious how that's going to go. And then I love this part. We heard this guy over the radio, and he's like, hey, don't come up here to my place to protest the music. People don't like the classical music he plays. Really funny timing. And then the funniest part is all the traps. He has all these traps, and he sets them for his critics who complain about the radio, the music over the radio. And it's just hilarious. So I love this scene, man. It's the funniest part. And then this is where we find out that Thaddeus is a ghoul. He sets off one of the traps by accident, and then he heals himself. And then the vertibirds are coming in, and Maximus has to stay behind, and he grabs a fake head that's conveniently right there. Convenient, but I'll take it. You know, it's the apocalypse. Are going to be dead bodies everywhere. It's fine. And then they have a kiss moment, and I love that there's the joke of the heads they're carrying also kiss. You know, that's a fun detail. So I love that. That was really funny, man. And here we got a scene where Vault 32, repopulating it, people are going in, and then somebody wants to leave, and then he is stopped by guards. So that's just to show you for sure, hey, this illusion of freedom, there is none. You know, you are forced to do your job, you're assigned to do something, you have to do it. They just don't realize that they aren't free because they have this illusion of security because nobody's really tested it, because they don't have any reason to. And that's why they can't let the truth of what really happened to Vault 32 out, because people would start questioning. So it's a bit strange to me that she hasn't done anything about Norm yet, but maybe she doesn't think that he has enough, you know. So Norm leaves and doesn't say goodbye to his brother and goes in here on the computer. And I love that we have the hacking minigame from the video games in here too. It's just all the fun little Easter eggs. I love it, man. It's so fun. And he sends a message to the Vault 31 and says the mission isn't going as planned. He's basically getting confirmation that Betty is here with the intent goal of leading this place. And there's something sinister. She has some sort of agenda. So he convinces them to open up the vault. He goes in. He spots something around the corner. It's making mechanical noises. I'm loving the tension we get here. And then whatever he sees, we don't get to see it. And I'm like, come on, bro, really? And you love to see it, though. So I'm guessing that we're going to find out what that is in the next episode almost immediately. But I love this episode. It was really fun. And two directors, I wanted to point this out as something that's unusual in TV. Sometimes they do have scenes that are directed by other directors because it really just depends on the scheduling of when things work out. But I'm guessing it's like, oh, the flashbacks were directed by one person just because they were already there on set and it was easier to do that. Usually they don't even bother to credit two directors when something like that happens because it's just like one scene or not enough. But there must be like union rules of what percentage of the episode needs to be directed by each person. I'm really curious. Sometimes when that happens, it's because the episode was written as two and then they combine it into one in editing. So I don't know what that means, but I'm curious about it. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section. But yeah, that's my little rant aside. I'm going to watch the finale and we're going to get into it right now. Right after I'm done, we'll see you guys on the other side. So I just watched the season finale of Fallout, and wow, what a stunning, amazing episode. And one of the best TV show finales I've maybe ever seen. Absolutely incredible. This is earth-shattering to the universe of Fallout, including the video games, because this is canon. This changes everything. We learn about the origin of the apocalypse. We learn about the true agenda of Vault-Tec, and just a stunning, amazing episode. This episode has truly everything. We got drama. We got revelations. We got answers, actual answers. We got romance. We got violence. We got fighting. We got a great setup for the next season. There has to be a season 2. There's no question in my mind that this show deserves it. And it's just a stunning episode across the board. Incredible performances, amazing production value. There's barely anything that I'm going to critique in this episode. A couple things here and there, but just absolutely amazing. And it is without a doubt that this is the best video game adaptation of all time. Fuck The Last of Us. Everything else is just insignificant in comparison to how I feel about this. I'm so hyped about this episode, pushing the franchise forward into the future, and it is amazing, absolutely amazing television. This sets a new standard for what we can do on streaming in 2024. Absolutely awe-inspired by this episode. The only response to this episode is woo-wee! That's how I feel about it. I can't wait to get into this episode. So, wow, we start with our main character, Maximus. He's riding in the vertibird, and he's going to Philly. It turns out that the Brotherhood of Steel has taken over Philly. So we're using that set again in a nice way. And, like I said in the last episode, they're reusing sets, but it makes perfect sense given that the Brotherhood of Steel is trying to claim this area as their own. Of course, they're going to go to any population center, take it over, make it theirs. And they don't just, reuse the set. We got new dressing to show this is the Brotherhood territory now. And Maximus is here with the head. And it is not the real head, of course. And we got the guy who's in charge up here, Elder Cleric, I suppose, is his title. So Maximus is here. He's brought the head that's not the head, and it instantly gets found out because, of course, it does. And this is the one part of the episode maybe doesn't make the most sense. The one thing I'll critique, we'll get to it in a second, but we got this character Dane here who was hurt, and they suspected Maximus in episode 1 of doing it. Turns out the culprit all along was Dane. And that means that Maximus is off the hook, seemingly, although they now know that he lied and tried to trick them. And now we got the Elder Cleric saying, again, kind of reiterating from the first episode, okay, you proved to me why I shouldn't trust you, and yet I'm going to trust you again. This is the one thing in the episode that does not track for me. I feel like the Brotherhood would have killed this guy in the first episode, let alone right now. So I don't know that I necessarily buy he gets out of this situation. I think they needed something else to really justify this. This is the one part of the episode I'm like, this makes no sense. They needed to redo this a little bit and think it through a little more. But now we got, an interesting scene here where all the characters are converging and we're all going to the same place because, of course, the Brotherhood is now going to Moldaver. Lee Moldaver, I think is how you pronounce the name. But now we flash back to the past, and here's where the real answers begin. So we got Cooper here putting his headphones in so he can hear what Betty is doing. That is, of course, a kind of betrayal, but it turns out he was very right to do that. There is a big meeting today. And then we got Lucy meeting Moldaver, and this is where the answers truly begin. So the head all along had the cold fusion key to everything, and that is what this whole show was about, was getting this infinite power source to Moldaver. And it turns out that Moldaver is the last vestiges of the new California Republic, the NCR. Turns out Shady Sands was the capital. It was bombed, and now they are here. The remnants are in this place here. And now we got at the same time, it's all these amazing scenes intercut. Everything really led down to this. Norm, the cliffhanger from last episode, what did he find? It turned out it was a robot. It was the character Bud, and now he's a brain, and it's like Futurama, the brains are heads in vats type of thing, classic sci-fi kind of trope, but it makes perfect sense here. He was trapped. It was the one kind of funny part of this episode, because there's so much serious stuff that happens in this episode. So we have a little comedic timing with this guy here, and he wants to eject him because now he's known too much, and he breaks into the secret that has been hidden all along. And I love that they actually had something satisfying, because a lot of times these mystery box shows, you'll get to the center of the box and the mystery is more interesting than the actual thing itself. In this case, they actually pulled off something that is worthy of all of this hype, of all of this breadcrumbing. We finally got something that was worth all of that, and that, I think, is really what made this whole show work and why it exists in the first place, and why Todd Howard and the Bethesda team wanted to make this show, because I think they knew we're going to be a while before Fallout 5, so we need something monumental, something earth-shattering that really leads us into that storyline, and we got it here in spades. There's somebody that wants to meet our guy Cooper here, and I knew all along it was going to be Hank. It has to be Hank, right? I just knew. They said Henry. I was like, H, okay, Hank, it's got to be. And we got this meeting of the minds in the other room with Betty, and it's amazing staging if you know the movie Doctor Strangelove, which I feel like is in part another inspiration for Fallout. So they're sprinkling in all these cinematic influences of the Fallout series. We had the boy and the dog reference a few episodes ago, and in this episode we got the Doctor Strangelove looking thing, except instead of a government or anything like that, it's private entities that are the ones who are controlling the world, and they are still controlling things to this day. And that's really interesting. What I hope they get into in season 2 is what everyone is doing and why. So I think it's really exciting that we got this crazy scene here where they're talking about giving influence over a certain amount of vaults to each of the different companies, and they're all going to be able to do their own experiments, and they all have ideas of how to manipulate their societies and do different experiments to see survival of the fittest, which one is going to be the best. And they reveal in this scene that it turns out that they dropped the bomb themselves. That's an amazing revelation. Definitely not anything we knew before. It's new to this show. And then we got Norm here finding out it's a bunch of stasis pods. So everybody who was an overseer, turns out that they were all from here. They were all from Vault Tech. They were all from the people who dropped the bombs in the first place. This was their long-term plan, and time is the apex predator, so they played the long game, and they want to run the world completely, and they don't want any government in their way. They're the ones in charge of absolutely everything. So it's really amazing storytelling here, and just the way that this was all revealed and the impact it has on Cooper. We really understand so much more of his character after this revelation and why he's gotten to the place that he's gotten. So it's quite an effective reveal here, and it makes sense why in the opening scene of the series his wife isn't there, because now that he knows this, he knows that he doesn't want to have anything to do with his wife. You would think maybe he would want to be in a vault, but he doesn't trust Vault Tech, right? But he knows they're going to drop the bombs. So I don't know. It's a little. I want to see more flashbacks after this, if we get a season 2. But just this earth-shattering revelation, and then the deep fake of our guy Hank, and it's a young Dale Cooper. I wonder if they thought of that. Dale Cooper from Twin Peaks, of course. Kyle MacLachlan, it's a deep fake of his younger self. It's a little shaky. You can tell it's not real. I can deal with that. It's not the worst. It's definitely good enough. So that's another thing I will nitpick. But there's so many amazing effects in this episode that I think are, generally speaking, better than what you even see in a lot of modern movies nowadays. The CGI is great. The production value is amazing. The costumes are amazing. There's so many things that go well. Like one deepfake face that could be better is like not even really worth mentioning, so I should probably keep going. Of course, Betty was in that scene as well. Betty, who's the overseer now. Just this earth-shattering revelation that his wife is on board with bombing the world and taking it over, building that better future for her daughter, they say. So absolutely a devastating revelation. And here we're learning the truth of what Hank did. And Maximus makes a mistake here and tells Dane about Lucy, which he really shouldn't have done that, because obviously Dane is on the Brotherhood's side, and Dane's like, you can't leave, forget about it. So I find that interesting. And then we're learning the truth about Hank, that it turns out that Hank's wife, Lucy's mother, found out the truth about the outside world. She discovered Shady Sands, and she realized that it was all a lie. She figured out too much, and Hank bombed Shady Sands. Another huge revelation. We got like a ton of big revelations. The big one is Vault Tech dropped the bomb, but all these other ones are definitely very relevant. So Vault Tech wants to be the only game in town. They want to take away all these factions because they're under this delusion that if they get rid of the rest of the factions, war will go away. Of course, Barb had the big line of war never changes. This is definitely the standout line from all the Fallout games. All of them started with that, with a monologue, war never changes, with Ron Perlman saying that. And I love that they saved it for this. I was kind of disappointed in the first episode when we didn't start with that. It works so much better here, and it honestly makes more sense now that they've actually said it in context. It's one of those things where sometimes, oh, they said the thing, it's kind of a meme, it's a little lame. In this case, it makes that line make a lot more sense, because it really didn't have much meaning when they said it originally. Like, it sounds cool, but now we have an actual definition to it and why it is a phrase that we say a lot. I think it adds depth to the franchise to make that a thing. So it was good. It was good. She said the thing, whatever, but it was great. So, this revelation, and I gotta give props to Ella Purnell, I think her name is. She really carried the emotions of this scene. Like, she's kind of on her own here. Like, it's close-ups on her face, and she has to do so much work to really sell this devastation that she's going through right now, and she really does it. And when at the end, she's like pointing guns at people, pointing guns at her dad, pointing a gun out at somebody that make you think that she shot Cooper for a second. You really buy that she could have made that drastic change. Like, she's on the cusp of becoming a different person at this point, and you really see all of it on her face, dude. And it is not easy, having directed movies and stuff like that and worked with actors. Like, it is really tough to do this. So I got to give props to her. So I love this devastation here, the big revelations. Everything's intercut, paced really well. So just when one scene is getting really interesting, we cut to something else really interesting, and it's just like, oh, I really need to find out what happens everywhere. And then it's an episode where we had a lot of talking. There's all these big revelations happening, really amazing stuff, but really it's just people sitting in rooms, right? We need something a little extra. So we get an amazing war battle scene with the theme of factions constantly killing each other. So we get to see that visually. And it's the best action scene we've gotten yet, and I love the soundtrack in the background. We got Nat King Cole here singing along. It was perfect, the way that they executed everything. And then it all stops, and Cooper has his moment. Cooper is here, and he brings back the design flaw in the suits, and they pay that off in such an amazing way. Like, all the setups and callbacks were just so well executed this season. And Cooper going on this killing spree, cutting the power. There is that thing where it's like, why didn't they just shoot him right away? Like, why let him talk? It's a movie. I could look past it. It was fucking cool, dude. Like, I love that scene, man. It's so good. And then we see Maximus. We see his past while it's being revealed to him that, Hank was the one who bombed the city. He's here to free Lucy and free her dad. And then the tables turn, and then he is about to turn around and start attacking him, and then, Hank gets in the power suit. There's a lot of stuff here that's really smartly executed, and you think Lucy's going to shoot her dad, and then Cooper comes in. So we don't get to really see what she would have done. I tend to think that she wouldn't have actually done it, and she would have just, like, said, you have to go now, or she would have, like, if he attacked her, then she would have defended herself, but I don't think that she would have went that far. But it's an open question. We don't know. It's interpretation at this point. What would she have done? And maybe that's setting up, if they do a season 2, which I really hope they do, then maybe she will finally be able to pull the trigger at that point. So I'm really curious how that's going to play out. I love this imagery here, the sunset, the sight line we get in that room where all the revelations happen. I forgot to mention that Lucy's mom is there as a ghoul, a feral ghoul, and incredible prosthetics. Like, the production design, again, is just amazing. And it was just, I love that revelation as well. Like, all these different revelations, what happened to Shady Sands, what happened to her mother, what happened to Vault-Tec when they dropped the bombs, what's going on. Like, everything lines up perfectly. Everything pays off. All of it is, like, influential to the franchise going forward. Like, there's nothing, like, trivial happening. Like, this adaptation actually matters. It is so good, dude. I can't believe that it is actually this good. And I'm just absolutely awe-inspired. And here we get the tragedy. I thought they were killing off Maximus for a second. And I love this tragic parting. You got to have that tragedy, and he has to go back to the Brotherhood. And then he wakes up, and of course the leader, Lee Moldaver, comes back and activates the cold fusion. And I thought it was going to be a bomb or something, but it turns out it really was just lighting up the city. Another little nitpick would be, okay, it's been 200 years. Are those things really going to be plugged in? There's not going to be problems in the power lines. There's not going to be filaments that went out of commission, like all this, whatever. The visual, awesome. I could look past that, but it is, nitpicking. I'm a nitpicker. You guys already know, so I'm gonna point that stuff out. But does it hurt my enjoyment of this episode? Absolutely not. And then because Maximus was in the room when she died, he gets the credit for finishing her off, even though he didn't do it. And they're calling his name, so that gives him a chance to be influential. And Moldaver said at the end, if you go back to them, you might actually be able to influence things going forward. So I think that's a great setup for season 2, that he's back with the Brotherhood. And now we got Cooper and Lucy leaving here, and now they're in Hollywood, which I love the Hollywood sign being sponsored by Nuka-Cola, which is awesome. And then we got a awesome final image of Hank in New Vegas, dude, which is a lot of people's favorite Fallout game. And I just love the imagery, seeing it in the distance. We already know what it is. And I think they're going to have to pick a canon ending for New Vegas now, because I'm pretty sure we're after that. So I'm really interested to see how they get past that. They either have to pick a canon ending, or they have to make like something bad, like another nuke goes off regardless of what happens in that game, something like that. So I'm really curious to see how they navigate a season 2, which has to happen, right? I mean, it's the show everybody's talking about right now. There's nothing else good on TV really that's this good anyway. So it has to be, right. And I love this final credit crawl of New Vegas, and they didn't have to do unique credits for every episode, but they did, and it paid off. It's really cool. The music is great. I am so happy with this show. I stand by my criticisms of episode 1, and I have these little nitpicks along the way, but wow, what a series. 9 out of 10. This episode I give a 10, even with the problems that I pointed out. It's just one of the best episodes of TV I've seen in a long, long time, and I haven't been this excited about a TV show since I was like watching Breaking Bad as a teenager. So with that, I mean, I don't have anything else to add. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below, and wow, what a show. And I don't know, I might have to stream Fallout or something. I don't want this to be the end for Fallout. So with that, it's been your boy Shuggy. We'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching, everybody. Peace out.